All right. Hi, everyone. Very good afternoon.
Hey, Johnny.
Good
Hello,
afternoon,
Johnny.
Johnny.
Hi, Johnny.
Yeah, hi. So, another day. It's Friday, of course, and lot many things as usual we witness on this day. One such is our learning session called Knowledge. I'm sure we all are very passionate about learning something new today. And do we have our host?
Yeah, we are here. I was
Yes.
here like 50 minutes earlier, but this meeting was not open.
All right. So I'm quickly making you the presenter. We also have Kiranjeet.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Yeah,
So I'm also making you the presenter. That's wonderful. All right. So 36 of us have joined. So can we wait for maybe 2 minutes more, if you allow?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So meanwhile, I'll request everyone to look at the participants list, and in case you see that someone from your team or somebody from your department studio is not available, you can please go and encourage and request them to join us fast.
Okay, just checking, like, is my screen visible to all or is it not?
Yes,
Yes.
it's visible.
Yes, it's visible.
Yes, it is visible. So it's building blocks of Angular.
Yeah.
Great. So Shubhrang,
It-
just on a personal note, what is Angular? And if you can enrich me with this term. I studied, trigonometry back in school days. And yeah, of course, the moment I see Angular,
It's
something called
a
blocks, something
in
called billing, it reminds me of, it makes me go back to my old school days and was something of Trigo. So what exactly is Angular, if you can
yeah
enrich?
in one line, Angular is a web application framework. Like, if you want to create a web application and you need certain frameworks to help you in that, then Angular is your guy. And it's really awesome to create web application from Angular. Like, it's give us huge give us many of the things like we have to like code it out. So in the convenience sense of developers and like to make clean and efficient applications, you can use Angular as a framework. So it gives you almost everything that you will ask in a web app. So that's the simple definition.
So through this session, we are going to understand how this is built. What are those building blocks?
Yeah,
The basics.
in order to create an application with Angular, you need to have certain core concepts. Like, you need to know certain core concepts, and those concepts are basically the building blocks. So you are going to learn something very very minor, the core principles of Angular, and you will then understand how you are going to create a web application through Angular.
That's interesting.
Yeah, we can definitely try a banned website for you.
All right. So what are the implications, or rather applicability, of Angular? Is it just limited to building a web page, or can we go just beyond?
Like, in sense, if you're beyond means you want to create application through, like, for inside your mobile phone, then yes, you can do that. As other frameworks also uses Angular as dependencies. Like, there's Ionic, that is cross mobile platform, that you can create one code base and you can create multiple apps, like for iOS and for Android. So in that also it is compatible with Angular. So you can create even more things from just using the Angular framework. So it's just not
All
about
right.
you are specific to web browser. You can have your app inside your native apps also from Angular.
That's really interesting. So, anyways, thanks, Shobrank and Kiranjit for coming over today onto our knowledge sessions. So today, everyone, we are going to understand very interesting things about Angular, the building blocks of Angular through the expert lenses of Shubhrank and Kiranjit. So without losing any much and more time, so I would like to pass on the platform to you, Shubhrank and Kiran.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Johnny. So, okay, guys, let's begin. So, welcome abroad. We are going to have a train journey. So, I believe everyone has gone through a train in their lifetime till now, somewhere, any place. So, we are going to hop on this Angular train. It's a continuation to the last session that you attended. In the last session, that you know that why we are going to use Angular, who uses it, and what is Angular. So we are going to continue from there only. So without further ado, let's go ahead. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So before we begin, here are some knowledge certificates. Be punctual to our timings, and any constructive feedback is really appreciable. Then please make sure that you are in silent mode. And if you want to have any question, you can just stop us at the mid, or you can ask at the end of the session. Avoid any kind of disturbance to make sure that your mic is on mute. Okay, so let's go ahead. So this will be our agenda. Basically, we are going to learn a little bit more about what is Angular app architecture, then how an Angular app starts, like the bootstrapping process, like it's the train engine that is going to start in this process. Then we are going to understand what are modules and components inside Angular framework. Then there are services, why we need services, and what is the role of a service. And then there is a navigation router. So how do we navigate inside a single page application? So that's how you're going to learn from Angular router module. Okay. So for the architecture, like the Angular app is basically divided into fundamental concepts. So some of these are like this. We have modules, we have components, we have templates, metadata, directives, data binding services. In this session, you are going to learn something about all of these core concepts, but we are not going to be indulging in more in-depth info, because you will be having other sessions. Like in the next session, you will going to specifically learn about directives and data binding. So in this session, we will be more focusing on modules, components, services, and templates. So let's go on. So basically, bootstrapping an app inside an Angular app. So whenever you create a new app, like in the last session, you know, we created an Angular app with the ng command. So we have Angular CLI with ng new and the name of your app. Okay. So whenever you create an app, there is some Angular framework provides you multiple resources, and it creates a base for your application. So that application looks like this. So this is an Angular app that we have already created. It provides you a certain core Angular configuration files. Like this JSON file is a definite configuration file for your Angular application. You can define certain aspects of your application from this file. Then you have source, and whatever we are going to say is the index HTML is the thing that we will recognize the first, because we know whenever we are creating a web page, we have this index.html. So the bootstrapping process is basically start from this app, this page only, like index.html. It first gets loaded. Then you can see we have an tag here that's specifying the app root. So where does this app root comes from, and what does it actually represent here? So basically, then there are certain other file, like it's main.ts file, which basically gets loaded. So you are not seeing here, like we are not having any CSS file or any script tags here. So this is the by default behavior of the application from Angular. So whenever you create whenever you serve your application, or whenever you create a test, like whenever you are making it for production ready. So you will also have this structure. In this, you will have that index.html, and you can see we have all the script tags here and all the CSS that we are going to include. So on the production end, this is the thing that gets rendered on your web browser. So we have runtime.js, polyfill scripts, and main. This main.js is basically this main.ts. So it gets transpiled into JS. So we know that Angular works on TypeScript, not JavaScript. And so that gets transpiled into JS. So whatever the application logic you will write inside your application will be getting bootstrapped here. Like you can see, we have defined a bootstrap function, and in which we are passing on the app module. So this module is basically the root of your application, this one. And in this module, you can see we have app component, and in this component you have a selector that has a name at app root. So this is the relation that we are getting from here. Like this app root is basically your template reference to this app root, and this is the HTML part that gets rendered inside your application. So the process is like this: HTML loads, then libraries get compiled and they load, and then the main TS file gets compiled, and that main TS file just pointed us to the root module. Then that module is actually pointing to a component, and that component is pointing to a template. So it's kind of a hierarchy. So the app module is the root of your application. So you can imagine it like in real sense, like you can imagine it like this. You have you have seen trains, lots of trains, and we have multiple coaches inside a train. So the first coach that is attached to the train engine is your root module. That module has all other coaches attached to it. So if there's problems with the engine gets replaced and the new engine gets attached to the first coach of that train. So root module is basically the first coach in the application. So I'm just making a real life example here. Okay, let's move ahead. I hope it's clear. Does anyone has any doubt? Okay. So moving ahead, we have modules.
Hey Shashank.
Yeah.
Hey Shashank. Hi, Garima Khanna this side. Can you please go back to that JSON file which you were displaying?
JSON file?
So, yeah, that angular.json.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know, like, what all the details are available here, where you are using this. Is this into index.html you are calling angular.json?
No. We are not calling angular.json the index.html. This is basically the Webpack configuration or other configuration file that you are going to use. In complex web application, you have multiple environments. Like it will be a staging
Right.
environment, it will be have a production environment. Then there are those environments defined here. Like this is your production
Okay.
environment. You can define maximum budget. What will be the budget of your application when you build it. So if you build your application once a while, you can see the initial total is like this. So I built this application earlier on, and this is the total of the size of the application. So
Okay.
this is
So when you will be
yeah.
migrating your code from one environment to another, so you will be updating this angular.json with the required details, right?
Yeah, if you have
It-
to configure something related to your environment files, or there are even more other aspects that are in that that are not and that cannot be covered in this session. We are just focusing on the beginner things here right now.
Okay.
So even if you are adding, like I have added a Bootstrap CSS, like we all maybe know that Bootstrap is a CSS framework that helps us in writing CSS more efficiently. So that is a part of here. Like this is the styles I have mentioned here. And if you are adding more npm libraries, then you can use this script tag. You can add more things here. So these will be available to the compiler when you compile that application site, and when this is the end result of your compilation process. So Angular checks this JSON file, and according to it will create this folder.
Okay.
And in a nutshell, it's kind of a metadata for your application, right?
Yeah.
There is certain parameters here, right? That defines where these files are located for, let's say, for your application, right? What is the path and what are other dependency, let's say assets. You might have noticed here,
Yep.
there is a tag assets, right? The attribute assets, okay? So this will define where your assets are located in this architecture, okay? And even
Okay.
the style. So this is just kind of a metadata for your application, right? And based on these configuration, when you, let's say, build or add any solution to this, okay, in this workspace, that directory by default followed, okay? So that's part of architecting this solution or workspace, and all these parameters are here, right? These are picked from here. Let's say you execute one command, let's say create new app or add new app to this solution, okay? So where that will be placed under, let's say, projects folder, okay? Or you want your custom name, right? And let's say when you build it, where this will be, let's say, available for you, the build. So that will be under dist demo app. See, the output path is mentioned there, right? So there are certain other the properties that are mentioned here, okay?
Okay.
Even your
Thank you.
Yep.
even your index and main are mentioned here. You can change it from here if you want to. Okay, let's move on. So modules. So basically, Angular modules are known as ng modules, and these modules are like are here for us, for the developers, to help in the certain principles of software development, like reusability of code and modular architecture. So Angular, we know that it's a totally modular framework. So whatever code you are creating for a specific problem inside a module, you can export that module to other applications also. So in this sense, you can have that same code or the same solution provided into multiple Angular applications, or even inside your own different modules inside your single application. So you can see that we have two ng module, and each module has certain components, and we will learn about components in a bit. And like those components have certain respect of your application that are being rendered in those components. And you can see that we are we are encapsulating those components or those module into a specific reusable part of your code. So this is how ng module works, and this is the importance. Like we even have like ES6 modules, but the core difference between ES6 and ng module is this ng module ng module decorator. So Angular basically use decorators to identify certain classes. Like it's kind of a name slip that identifies an entity. So we have this class app module. So Angular doesn't know what this class can do and what this class is intended to do. So with this decorator, that ng module decorator, we are telling Angular that this is a module, and please use it as a module for the compilation process. Inside the decorator, in this decorator, we have declarations, imports, providers, and bootstrap. So we know that if you go to this structure, we always get this app module by default. Whenever you create a new application inside Angular, you will get this app module. And in this module, you can see that you will always have this app component. So this is basically the root component of your application. So you can even relate it to the train example that I earlier gave. Like this is the first coach of your train. So basically everything is connected to this module. So if this module gets deleted, your application won't work. So that's the importance of this app module. And inside declaration, we declare whatever the components we are going to use inside this module. So we have to declare these many components here. Then I want to have this module with other services or other things. Like I want to have some specific functionality from browser module, then app routing module, then this is font awesome. This is generally specifically for the icons. Then we have a luggage module. Then we have a pantry module that's related to the train example. Like we have a luggage coach inside a train and pantry coach inside a train. And this is where we are bootstrapping it. So any question inside modules?
Can we use AS6 modules also here, instead of NG modules?
This is basically an ES6 module only with just added Angular sugar coating. Like this is the decorator, that's the part of Angular. You are
Okay.
basically creating a ES6 module, then adding a NG module decorator, and then making it as a NG module. In turn, it's just plain JavaScript only.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
So how to create a module through Angular CLI commands? So this is basically the commands that we use to create. This is the full and this is the shorthand form, like G is for generate, M is for module, and we can generate multiple modules. It's up to us. Then we move ahead. Then we have the components. Like the components are basically patches of your screen. So whatever kind of view you are going to represent in your application, you can divide it into your components. Like let's take an example of this Google Slides only. You can see that this area, like this, the navigation pane is always constant. We are only changing this area. Nothing is getting changed from this to this area. These navigation pane are always same. So we can say that these two are components and they are always constant throughout the application. So you can do the same thing inside Angular with those components. So like you have header, you have a section, you can create multiple components and put that specific component logic inside that component only. So the component class is always decorated with ng component decorator. So we will going to learn a little bit about this decorator also. And that's how you can create your complex web application into segregated, you have the opportunity here to segregate your whole application into different components and reuse them throughout your application. If you like, you are going to create a button and it has certain kind of styling, then you can just create a single component for button and put that styling and use that component throughout your application. So that's how Angular provides you these functionalities. So let's move ahead. So again, the components class is basically, or what you can say that the component comprises of this whole thing. So you have a template, you have a class, and that class contains the metadata. So we know that decorators in Angular are basically defining are the name tags which define an entity. So whenever we create a class, like, or we create a component, even the component, like this is the component that is pre-built by the Angular. So you can see that it is also decorated with this component decorator. And in here, we are defining certain things that Angular should know how to treat this component while the compilation process. So we are providing a selector. A selector, we know that it's going to render the template, and we have reference to our template. So if we click on this template, so whatever HTML code you will write here, it will be represented inside that component. And whatever style you are going to write here, that will be also represented into this component HTML. So this is a feature of Angular, like you can even segregate your styles throughout your application. Like whatever style I want to write for this about page will be residing in here. Whatever style I want for footer will be residing here. And even if I write same styles, like if I'm taking image tag, and if I write it on the certain CSS classes or certain properties here for the image tag, it will be only encapsulated to this component. It won't get to other components, even if you write CSS for your specific HTML tags. So these are the functionality and the features that Angular provides you. Moving ahead, we can generate the component like this through the Angular CLI. It's same. We are just replacing the module with the component name here, and these are the files that generally the component generate. So we have the HTML file, we have the CSS file, we have the TypeScript class file, and this spec file is basically for unit testing purpose. We will learn about that in the further sessions. So any doubt inside the components? Anyone?
Subran, not from component. Actually, I have a doubt regarding adding a new app in Angular.
New app.
When we are generating a new app in Angular, so it takes a lot of time. Like it takes 10 to 15 minutes to set up all the things. So is there any alternative for that?
Like that's the basic, whenever you create Angular needs to give you a boilerplate with all the things that you want. So there will be a certain alternatives, I believe, but that will be way too high. Like they will be way too high for conceptual wise. So let's wait on
Should
that
not
for.
take 10 to 15 minutes. That could be related to your internet speed because there'll be certain dependency will be installed. Okay. Well, I think I generally
Yeah.
get it within kind of a 30 or second or 60 second, but I don't know. Maybe that could be issue of let's say internet or so.
Okay, right. Actually, each time I install it takes 10 to 15 minutes.
I
That's
don't know.
really long.
No,
It
no,
shouldn't.
that's
It
not
should not
acceptable.
take. Yeah, it should
Yes.
not take like that. There's something wrong with
We
your
can
end.
discuss it separately. Okay, and
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah,
maybe
sure.
Shubhank you can continue.
yeah. Okay. So let's go ahead. Then we have component template. So the template is basically the HTML file which gets actually rendered into your web browser, and Angular provides certain syntax also. So whenever there is a page that you are going to render from the Angular application, the Angular compiler will make sure that whatever the code, like whatever the Angular syntax is present on that template, will be compiled first, and it will be then updated to your HTML DOM. So, like. For example, let's take two of our modules and let's have the code pantry HTML. So this is a certain, this is the Davo app basically. So I've written almost simple HTML, like this is the classes that are from Bootstrap. And then there is this is Angular syntax. So basically all these are compiled out, and it will transpile it, and it will update your DOM before displaying it to your web browser. We will learn about all these in our further sessions in Angular. Not in this session, but we will definitely learn about what is this ng-for, what is ng-container in further sessions. Let's get it. The template contains other templates also, like I can use this and have other templates here, like about page. I can even have that page here only on my main index page. So it's not it's the selectors of the components. You can use them to reference to your templates. So these selectors are referencing to your templates, and templates are your HTML file. So you can use them as you wish. So you can see we have a root component which has a root template, and that template contains some child templates, and that child template contains a grandchild template. So this is the way that hierarchy goes on. So the root component will always that main first coach of your train that will be that gets attached to the engine. Then the component decorator. So we have already known, like this is the selector, then the template URL, then the style URL. So you can even have multiple URLs in the style. As you can see, it's an array. So this decorator is defining your component behavior. So that's how a component decorator works. So this is the service part, and yeah, from here Kiranjit will explain it. So over to you, Kiran.
Okay. So now everyone, you have gone through the concept of the modules and the components. So let us understand now what exactly is a service. So now service is a simple class where you are defining some particular functionality. Okay, like in the component, what we were doing, it was associated with your HTML and CSS, like regarding your view. Whereas a service is related only to your functionality part. For example, like you may have some login service which will be used by different components in your application. So we will create one single service for it, and we can access in all other different components. As you can see in the image also, like we have component 1, 2 and 3, and all the three components have access to that particular service. So this service, now how do we create such service? We use that injectable decorator for it. Okay. So next we have the service DI. Now DI here stands for dependency injection. Now what is dependency injection? Like when we have created the service, now how do we use it in the component? Now the using that into the component is the concept of the dependency injection, where you are injecting your service into the component. Okay, now how do we inject that service? We inject that service into the constructor of your component. Like we have the TypeScript file, in that we have the constructor, and there we inject that service so that we can use the functionality of that service into that component. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so how do we generate a service? Here is the command for generating the service: ng generate service, and then the name of your service. And the shorthand notation for it is ng, gs, and your service name. As you can see, two files will be generated. One is the spec.ts file, which is used for the unit testing purpose. And the second, we have that service.ts, which will contain the service class. So this is the thing that will be generated after it, that you can see in the image. We have the injectable decorator for it, like which shows that you can use this class as dependency injection. And then we have the class, and we also have that provided in the
Okay. Devanshu, you have some question or query? Like you. Okay.
Okay, so we have provided in root. So this provided in root tells us that this service can be used throughout the application. It will be accessible to all the components, you can use that a whole around the application. So any question till now? Okay, I'll take it as a no. Then next slide. Okay, so next let us understand the router module. Now what generally is routing? Like, any guess? Can anyone tell what is routing?
Routing is basically of navigating different components.
Yeah, you are right. So routing helps us in navigating from one view to the another. So in Angular, we use the router module for it. So this router module provides us the functionality to configure routing in our application. So here we can see the app routing module.ts file, which will be generated by default. When you create your application by Angular CLI, you will have this file by default. Here we can see we have const routes, which is a variable of type routes, in which we define all the routes which we will be needed in our application. And then we, in the @ng module, we import and export the router module so that we can use it in the application. Next slide. Okay, so here is an example of how we define the paths. Now you can see that the first thing is the path, and the second is the component. Like what path do we want to navigate to, that we define, and the second is the component. So component, like whatever component we want to load on that particular path, we define that. Similarly, we have about to path, like on the about path, we want to load the about component. So this is how we can define the routes for the application in this routes. Okay, so let us.
Yeah. So let's have that demo app in working.
I'll share my screen.
Okay, you can share your screen.
Yeah, I'll share. Okay, so is it visible?
Yeah.
Okay, so first let us understand the concept of services here. Okay, so I've already created a service for you because otherwise it would take too much time. So here I have a pantry.service.as file. Here we can see provided in root, like so that we can use this service around the application. And then we have our class pantry service. Like as we know, there is only one pantry service in a train also. So here also we are like relating to that example so that we can use this application around the you can use this class around the application. So here we have some data, like we have drinks of objects like cold drinks, beverages. So we will be defining some functions here, like we have this get drinks function, which will be returning this dot pantry store dot food dot drinks. Then we have a get cold drinks function, which will be returning this pantry store dot food dot drinks dot cold drink. You can see pantry store. Then we have dot food and then drinks and cold drinks, as we can access it. And we have one get hot drinks function, which will return the beverages from this. So now to use this, we will be going in this coach class. Okay, so first thing that we need to do is we need to inject that service. So in this constructor, we can see that we have injected this pantry service, and now we will have access to all those functions which we have defined here. Okay, in this class, we have this 3 variables also, in which we will be storing that data, which we will be getting from that service. Okay, so in the ng init, we can see we are accessing this local variable of that class, and we are calling this dot pantry service dot get drink. So this is that function of that pantry service class. You can see get drinks, get cold drinks, and get hot drinks. We are just calling those functions here, and we are getting that data. Similarly, we are getting that second function and the third function here. And now in this HTML file, we will be displaying that data here. This is actually the concept of data binding, like how do we display it, which we will learn in the further section. But we just want to show you that, okay, go to pantry, you can see the data here. So this data is we are getting from that service part. The component is getting from the service, and we are displaying it in the component HTML file. Okay, any question? I'll take it as a no then.
Yeah,
Hey Kiran.
Yeah.
Can you please go back to that previous like
Service?
pantry dot services?
Yeah.
Where you were showing us there is a class.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to check, like, can we have multiple classes into this? For example, a train is having only one pantry, but if in case a train is having more than one pantry, they are serving, so we can have multiple classes, right?
Yeah, you can create multiple services. That's not an issue. But that you can just like this service will be creating, you're doing some particular task, and you can have multiple services there. There is no issue.
Yeah, just to add on, inside one TS file, the ideal approach is you always create only one class. So this is the best practices that are mandated by the Microsoft TypeScript documentation.
Okay.
So if you are creating a class, then it should only has the TS file should only have only one class that is being exported. You can create classes for for encapsulating data or type checking your data, but you need to export only one class from a TS file. You can create multiple TS files, which will be like the services or your components. That's not an issue. But for a single TS file, there should be only one class.
Okay. So this is being suggested by Microsoft. It's better to have one class, but still we can have multiple classes, right?
Yeah, we can still define, like I can write another code and define a class, like for type checking my certain, like this pantry store. This is the data that is being coming from our backend. So this is that JSON mockup data, which we have already right here. And we can even have to make it type safe, we can have a class that will be with our name pantry store, that will define what in that class will have, like food, snacks, dessert, and stuff like that. So we can define that, but it's not ideal, or it's not a best practice to have that class inside on a specific file.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we have seen this. Now let's go to the routing part. Okay, so here in the header, we can see we have home and about. On clicking on home, I can see this and about its train journey. So how we are navigating to it, let's see that. Okay, so first thing, like we should be considering three things. One is the router outlet, then we have the setting the router links and setting the paths in the app routing file. So here we can see in the app.component.html file, here we have the router outlet. So what is this router outlet? This is acting like a placeholder, like if I want that particular component to load on clicking a button, so where should that component load? This is the place where that component will be loaded. So this is acting like a placeholder which the Angular will fill with the considering that router. Okay, so let's move to the header. In the header, we have this home. Now on clicking this home icon, I want to go to that home path. So for that, we will be using the router link, and in this we can define the the path on which path do we want to navigate. So on this home, we want to navigate to the home path, and on the about, we want to navigate to the about path. So we will be using in the HTML file, we use the router link, and in the app routing module.ts, here we define on that particular path which component should be loaded. On the home component, home path, we want to load the landing page component, and on the about, we need to load the about page component. So this is how we are navigating from one view to the another, setting the router links, adding the router outlet, like where we want that particular component to be loaded, and the setting that path here. Here we also have this path, like on this, this is a home path, like where do we want to, which component do we load, like in the first, like as we hit the localhost :4200, what do we want to load? So here we want to redirect it to the home one. So on this, we will be redirected to the home path and the landing page component. So this is all, like we also have this path train coach luggage, in which we want to load that coach luggage component. So here we can see on home, about, and on these buttons also we have this router links added. I can show you that it is on landing page.
No worries, Kiran. I will share it. But we are actually running out of the time. Like the next session is also getting up. So, anyone has any question till now? Like, if they want, they can stay. We can discuss it in this call, or perhaps in another medium. Or does anyone has any question related to anything? Okay,
Anyone? Any questions?
I believe Divanshu has some question, but his voice is breaking up.
No, from my side.
Okay, thanks. So we can do one thing, Divanshu. You can just reach out to us for your questions. We will be happy to answer your any doubt. So I believe, John, we can sunset this meeting. Yeah, he's saying he will be reaching us later.
All right. So thank you so much, Ram. To you, Kiran, as well, for this wonderful session. I'm sure in case any one of us would have any questions, we'll reach directly to Kiran or Shubhram or to Neeraj to get our queries resolved. With this, everyone, thanks for coming over. And it's now time to discover a new set of learning to the expert lens of Rahul Miglani. And before that, let's take a short break of 3 minutes, because the next session is going to start exactly at 16:15 hours. So thank you once again for being here. Have a wonderful and great day ahead.
Thank you, Johnny.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Kiran.
everyone.
Yeah, it's a nice session.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Nice session.
Bye. Thank you.
All right, one thing everyone, do not forget to share the feedback.